Part 6. Paul never taught Sunday worship as the new Sabbath. Many use the writings of Paul to justify the transition from Sabbath to Sunday. But a careful reading of Scripture shows that Paul never taught such a change. In fact, Paul upheld the Sabbath in both word and practice, while warning against man-made doctrines and religious innovations. Q1. Did Paul continue to observe the seventh-day Sabbath? A1. Acts 17:2. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the Scriptures. Paul's custom was the same as Jesus', to honor the Sabbath. This was after Christ's resurrection, showing the practice continued among early believers. Q2. Did Paul teach that the Sabbath was abolished? A2. No. In Acts 18:4, Paul reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded the Jews and the Greeks. The Sabbath remained central in his ministry. Q3. What about Romans 14:5-6? A3. This passage is often misunderstood. Paul says, "One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike." But this refers to personal convictions about fasting and ceremonial observances, not the 10 Commandments. The Sabbath commandment is part of the unchanging moral law. Challenge to Bible teachers and apologists. If Paul upheld the Sabbath and never declared Sunday holy, where did the tradition come from? Why is Paul's teaching being used to defend a doctrine he never taught? Galatians chapter 1, 6-9 warns strongly against preaching another gospel, one that contradicts what was originally delivered. Replacing God's Sabbath with a tradition of men fits that warning perfectly. Colossians 2:16-17 is another passage often cited to invalidate the Sabbath. It says, "Let no man therefore judge you in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ." However, Paul here speaks about ceremonial Sabbaths, special feast days, not the weekly Sabbath established at creation. The Greek structure differentiates between the Sabbath days, plural, ceremonial, and the singular seventh-day Sabbath, which is part of God's moral law. Let's also note, nowhere does Paul say, worship on the first day of the week. He never calls Sunday the Lord's Day. He continues meeting on the Sabbath throughout his ministry. Truth. Paul respected God's law. He taught salvation by grace, but also wrote in Romans 3:31, "Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law." Paul rebuked those who added or subtracted from God's truth, and he never participated in the formation of Sunday worship as a replacement of the Sabbath. Ask yourself, if Paul honored the Sabbath after Christ's resurrection, shouldn't I? If the New Testament church kept Sabbath, why do modern churches replace it? If Paul warned against other gospels, could Sunday observance be a part of that warning? Conclusion. Paul preached Christ crucified, not Sabbath annulled. He followed the example of Jesus, upheld the law, and taught that believers are to be rooted in truth, not tradition. Will you follow Paul as he followed Christ, or follow tradition that Paul never endorsed?